Have you got a dirty gearbox? Maybe it's a bit neglected, a bit unkept. Mine was. Stick around as I turn this old brute from this into this. And the best part, you can totally do the same, and it's way easier and cheaper than you think. Let's get started.
I started this project wanting to try something different, which was laser cleaning. It's kind of a mix between Thor's hammer and a crappier version of Zeus, the god of lightning. Should you do this? I don't think so. It was really expensive and the pitting is really obvious. I'd way rather get it vapor blasted, but that requires the gearbox to be completely stripped, and I don't want to do that unless I have to. I mean, I'd love to have this thing rebuilt, but I need to prioritize spending. So in the absence of vapor blasting or laser cleaning, I suggest hitting it with some degreaser, a wire wheel, and use paint. The best part of this project is getting the bolts zinc plated. To do that, you'll need to remove the bolt you want zinc plated, then immediately replace it with a temporary bolt before moving on. This is to keep that seal just behind the bell housing intact. If you break that seal, the gearbox will need to be torn down and resealed. That's a specialty job, and I'm not about to pretend I've got the skills to go that far. The diff came out amazing, but again, nothing a wire wheel and some wax and grease remover can't do. As the diff is currently raw steel, I need to get some paint on it ASAP. So let's get into the action. Next is, I got all my bolts for the gearbox, so we'll just grease them up a little bit, throwing the other bolts in to keep the seals, and someone's obviously been in here before because that is not OEM silicone, but whatever. With all the bolts removed and replaced with temporary ones, the next step is masking, followed by some primer. There she is, looking pretty good. That's 2 coats of primer, but that's going to dry overnight. Diff has had 2 coats of paint, so that's probably done now. This is the 6-speed crossmember and gear linkages. Since I want this car looking brand new, I'll be stripping everything down and getting the key hardware plated. The crossmember itself will eventually be powder coated, but getting the bolts sorted is the first step. So all these bolts, plus the ones in the boot, will be going to the electroplaters tomorrow. Mate, she's a beautiful day today. Beautiful day to be inside working on the car. Job 1 today, take the rear cover off. Gonna go get that vapor blasted. Pull this off, check the condition, something that looks mint. Yeah, just have a look at everything, see if anything in here needs to be electroplated. This is the crossmember off the 6-speed, and I actually just crawled underneath the GC8. Possibly all I need off this is this to match the 6-speed, so I'm gonna leave this for now. I don't want to waste my time and clean this whole thing up if it's not gonna fit or whatever, so I'll wait until I get that gearbox, try and fit it into here and just see what, maybe I can use the 5-speed one, maybe I can use the 6-speed one. I just have no idea at the moment. That's the plan right now. Leave this, pull this apart. The 6-speed starter motor, I'm gonna pull it apart and try and get the 2 housings vapor blasted, cleaned up, check the brushes, and gearbox needs a paint this afternoon, but I need to give it 24 hours, so that's a job for later on tonight. But yeah, diff looks awesome. Yeah, let's get cracking. Rightio, I've had a few days off this week. Today I want to paint that gearbox again. I tried 2 different aluminium paints. This Rust-Oleum brand was the winner. The bottom half was painted in this, and the top half I used a VHT aluminium paint. To me the VHT looks too blue, so I decided not to use it. I've already done 1 coat, so I've got to do 1 more this afternoon. I got some whole bunch of stuff back from the electroplaters today. I want to get the starter motor done, the diff together, the gearbox done, so that way I can just put them all together, wrap them up in cellophane, and just put them away and forget about it. This is what came back from the electroplaters. I need to separate all that first, get the stuff from the gearbox in one pile, the diff in one pile, the starter motor in the other pile, assemble the starter motor, so these have all been vapor blasted. Let's get separating this, and then I'm going to just start with the starter motor diff gearbox. So that took a while, but I've separated everything, and honestly, man, I'm so happy with how this diff has turned out. It looks so good. I love the vapor blasting. That's something that's like fresh and new to me, and I'm going to be using as much as I can with aluminium. But yeah, it looks awesome. I will be replacing the seals, and the gasket in here is still the second-hand one, so I'll freshen that up and put a new one in. Starter motor's looking real good too. Made it look real nice. Haven't actually tested beforehand. Should have, but I'll do that now. Next step is I need to plug up all the holes in the gearbox, and then once I've done that, I'll start with the bolts and all the accessory bits and pieces. I've got all the shifter linkages I've got to put together. Right, the last thing to do before I pack this diff away, I need to replace the axle seals. This is the original one that came out. It's a genuine Subaru, comes with a dust sealed, and it's just old, cruddy, want to put a new one in. I picked up these obviously do not have the dust sealed. I got these from the local bearing and seal shop. They'll be absolutely fine.
Future Steve here. I've since learned that if you're running good quality oil, it's best to stick with OEM seals. Aftermarket seals can actually swell up, causing a leak, whereas the OEM seals are made from much higher grade rubber. So whenever you can, definitely go genuine. They may be twice the price, but they'll be cheaper in the long run. I'll be swapping these out at a later date. On one of my earlier videos, someone suggested I drop the background music. So from this point forward, I've taken it out. Let me know in the comments, better with or better without?
A little bit of rubber grease.
Differential is complete, and may I say it looks amazing. The last thing I've got to do is replace the gasket for the diff cover, but that's coming from overseas, so I can do it at a later date. Now it's time to plug up all the holes in the gearbox and add all those shiny bolts and shiny accessories. Here I am doing the gearbox sump. In hindsight, I should have pulled this off. There's a magnet inside, and it would have been good to see how much gunk and debris it's collected over the years. Replacing these bolts is actually super satisfying. It transforms a budget paint job into something that looks way more professional.
Check this bad boy out. That's the gearbox. I'm waiting for seals for the selector shaft and then this shaft down here, which I'm assuming is a reverse lockout.
For some reason, it never occurred to me to pull this off and send it in with everything else. I have no idea what I was thinking.
Alright, because I don't have big enough muscles and they're a little bit too small, I cannot get this gearbox up onto the bench, so I'm going to do it on the floor. I want to replace this seal here, this one here, and then I'm assuming I have ordered the tail shaft seal. And then, not sure if I've got the seal that probably lives underneath there.
Here I am replacing the selector shaft seal, and I don't like to admit it, but it did take me way longer than I expected. It's often the small ones that are the real hard ones to get out. Bigger ones just seem to come out easier. Anyway, I got it out and I did my best not to scratch the shaft. I tend to use rubber grease when I'm working with seals. Failing that, I'll use whatever fluid the seal is designed to work with, in this case, gearbox oil. I generally set the seal flush with the housing, then tap it in just a smidge further, as most castings have a slight bevel. This ensures the outside of the seal makes full contact with the housing. It's always made sense to me, but you do have to be aware that you don't push it too far, that it's too difficult to get out for future repairs. The last thing I do is make sure that it's even all the way around. I generally try and avoid removing seals this way because there's a decent risk of scratching or damaging the shaft, and scratches can lead to leaks, which kind of defeats the purpose of replacing the seal in the first place. I took as much care as I could throughout this process. It's always a balancing act between applying enough force to remove the seal, but not so much that you cause harm. Sometimes spending a little bit more time being cautious can save a lot of headaches down the road.
Now onto the reverse lockout. I've done that seal and I'm in a bit of a pickle. The photo that I took has that line sitting on the bottom here with this in that orientation. So effectively 180 degrees out from that. Now, to get there, do I rotate it this way or do I rotate it this way? Both are sprung and they want to go back to the same spot. I'm going to take a guess. My best bet is that it's going to be anti-clockwise because this bracket, I'm assuming when you pull the reverse lockout, you actually pull that lever up on the gear shift and then it actually pulls a cable. I'm assuming that it wants to be pulled this way, so I'm going to rotate this shaft 180 degrees counterclockwise, put it in, and then hopefully it's in the right way. But I won't know until probably months and months down the track. Done. So that is what I'm hoping is the correct action. I figured it probably wouldn't be a push cable, it'll be a pull cable. I'm hoping I've done it right, but I will add a note to the gearbox just in case.
Since this guy wasn't smart enough to take that shield off, I couldn't really get the hammer in there to seat the seal properly. Using a punch isn't ideal, but it works fine if you're careful. Just make sure it's big enough and you hit the edges so you don't damage or dent the seal. It's also a really good way to make sure the seal sits flush with the housing. As you work your way around the punch, you can hear the sound change once it makes contact with the gearbox casing. And if you're like me, you can always use the old seal to tap it in just that little bit further.
Right, so getting part of the journey of fitting the 6-speed gearbox into the GC8 is the fact that it's a little bit different. There's stub shafts that come out of the gearbox and then the axles actually slide over that with a pin through it to lock it in place. Well, the pin doesn't lock it in place, the pin stops it from falling out, but either way. The gearbox that I want to fit in, the 6-speed, I'll show you. So normally that gearbox that comes out of that GC8 would have a shaft coming out of it, and here we have nothing. So the car that this came out of, the axle actually had a shaft that would push into here. So that's how they work. They were slightly different. It's called female and male. So this is a female, and then, but the problem is I've also got a female on the car, so I need some way of connecting them. Luckily, the internet, someone out there has already done that searching for me, and these part numbers here, they're both the same from right to left, are effectively like a little stub shaft. So this here should solve my problem. So that, I've got a retaining clip to put on here. I can push that in, and then I'll have a stub shaft coming out of this gearbox. Axle slides over here, pin goes in there to stop it from coming off. I do have to replace that oil seal because that oil seal will not work with this. I actually don't know if these are going to work. I think they're going to work. I'm like 90% sure, but I won't know until I try it. So I may as well replace those seals. I'll keep this out of the gearbox until now. And when I get to the point where I can put the gearbox in the car, I will double check that these all still work. Yeah, that's the solution. You know, while I'm here, I'm going to do a cheeky, see if this fits. It does. I think it's going to work. I don't know, it's just exciting when you see something that you buy and you actually don't know, but it works. Well, so far, that part seems to work.
This was another seal that fought me the entire way. I do wonder if there's a better way of getting them out. If there is, let me know in the comments below. Yeah boy, the gearbox is finally done and it looks mint. Every seal's been replaced, input, output, both axles, selector shaft, even that little tricky reverse lockout. It feels so good knowing it's fully prepped and ready to slide back into the car. Next step, wrap it up in plastic and put it away in storage until it's needed on the big day.
I'm buzzing to have that ticked off. What do you reckon? Would you have a crack at a job like that? Or am I just the old one out who loves a spotless underbody? Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. I'm also keen to hear your thoughts. Did you like the more stripped back video without the music, or was it kind of missing something? I appreciate you guys hanging out. Until next time.
Right, that's over big jump. Into 6 left over jump. 50. Okay.
Did you like that jump, wee man?
How high were we on those jumps? Gee whiz, that was high, man.